What if I told you one of the things you're doing to make yourself happier and more productive may actually be sabotaging that productivity? These are my sons, John and Ian. John is a sophomore in college, and Ian is an 8th grader. Over the last 6 years, one of our favorite things to do together is to go rock climbing, usually to an indoor gym. We give each other advice on how to conquer a move that has plagued us, or we cheer each other on when we finish a route that has been problematic. It's just a great time of exercise and fun and bonding. 2 years ago, though, as I was putting my phone away to start a climbing session, it buzzed. When I looked at it, I see that it's a text from a student. I'm a business professor here at Utah State, and I teach the negotiations class. As a matter of practice, I give students my cell phone number towards the end of the semester. That way, when they're no longer in my class, they can still reach out for mentoring and coaching on big negotiations. And this student had a job offer in hand. She also knew from being in the class that she should negotiate some aspect of that job offer, even if it wasn't salary. She unfortunately had a number of people in her life that were telling her not to negotiate any part of it, to take the offer that was given. And she was reaching out to me for guidance, next steps, things like that. So when I saw that text, I was firmly in my role as a mother, and probably secondarily in my role as a rock climber. But I felt pressure in seeing her text to shift from my role as a mom and a rock climber to being in my professor role. My expertise is in work and family and how the two affect one another. Being tethered to work through our mobile device makes us think we're happier because we're more productive, we have this flexibility, and we're empowered. And we think it makes our families happier because we can be with our family or with our friends, but still, kind of engaged at work, so that should make our employers happier. Unfortunately, my research with colleagues shows that if you just look at the employee, being tethered to work makes them happier and more committed. But when you take a look at the effects of tethering on the family, the game changes. Employees are not islands. What affects an employee affects their family, and what affects their family comes right back around to affect their employer. Being tethered to work makes us think we're going to have more time and energy and focus on our non-work life, our family, our friends. Unfortunately, the reality is when we're tethered to work, we often blur the lines between our work and our non-work lives, and this has far-reaching implications. The struggle with being tethered to work is that in doing so, we steal resources from our personal life, like our effort and our time and our attention, and we give them to our work lives. Let me give you one example. Say you're sitting at the dining room table at home, and you're replying on your phone or on your internet-enabled tablet to a work email while you're also trying to talk to your significant other about their day. Who did they talk to? What happened? Was their day good or bad? In that moment, most people don't feel like they're doing either role well. They're not really focused on the work email and replying in an effective way. They're not engaging with their significant other in an effective way that makes the significant other feel valued. And that leads to this feeling of burnout. So how many of you have woken up on a Monday morning and realized you had to go to work and you're like, oh, please don't make me go? It's that overwhelming feeling of dread and emotional exhaustion. It's not a good thing. And unfortunately, being tethered to work triggers a lot of that burnout, that experience of burnout. But it's also bad for our significant others or our spouses because it leads to this feeling of resentment and resentment for their organization. Resentment is this feeling of bitterness that we've been treated unfairly. And unfortunately, it's really toxic to relationships, and it's almost impossible to repair that damage. So it's not only bad for employees, it's not only bad for their spouses, it's also bad for organizations because it increases the likelihood that that employee is going to turn over. And one of the most interesting things my colleagues and I found in this research, it's not just so much the employee's lack of commitment to the organization, but it's the spouse's lack of commitment to the organization that leads to turnover. So let me say that another way. If I'm thrilled with my job, I love my colleagues, my boss is awesome, but my spouse is unhappy with my work situation, I'm probably looking for a new job soon. Thankfully, all is not lost. There are several things we can do to either not tether or to buffer the effects of tethering. The first one is we need to pay attention on the front end. When we're interviewing with an employer, when we're in the recruitment process, to pay attention to signals that employer may give about how often or how much, to what extent they expect us to be tethered to work through our mobile device. Pay attention to that. Consider whether that's somewhere we really want to be. Secondly, we need to manage our work and non-work boundaries. How often are we going to be tethered to work? When? What hours? To what extent? These are things we need to be intentional and mindful about and not just compulsive about. Which brings me to my third tactic. We need to ask ourselves, do we really have to be tethered to work? Sure, there are some jobs like a transplant surgeon who's probably tethered 24/7, but most of us probably don't need to be or don't need to be as much as we are. Our employers don't necessarily expect it. And if they don't expect it and we're stealing our time and our attention and our focus from our personal lives and giving them to work, we're giving those resources to work without any reward, no benefit. So why are we doing it? Lastly, I want to encourage you to go old school. This picture is a wooden box that sits on the floor of the local Logan Youth Shakespeare program. My son Ian is an actor in this program, and the students and actors, when they come into the rehearsal hall, their phones have to go in this box. That's the director's requirements. And it's so that while they're there, they're focused on memorizing lines, helping out each other memorize lines, and they're preparing for their next big Shakespearean play. And let me tell you, this is the tightest group of teenagers I have ever seen. And I have to think it's because when they're there, they're not in a group, everybody's sitting on their phone looking at it. They're engaged. They're having those eyeball-to-eyeball conversations. They're challenging one another. They're supporting one another. And if 30-plus teenagers can part with their phones for 4 to 6 hours several days a week, can't we? My son is learning, if he manages how much he's tethered to his phone, that he can keep it from stealing resources from his role as an actor. I'm learning right alongside him how to keep my being tethered to work from stealing resources from my role as a mother, as a friend, as a rock climber, as a mediator. When you leave here today, I hope if you leave with one message from my talk, I hope it's that we should not assume that being tethered to work is making us happier and more productive, making our spouses happier, or making our workplaces healthier and more productive. Thank you.